Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to come and listen to us talk. My name is Tracy Markie. I'm founder and CEO of Enenuity Systems. We are a value-added reseller, and we also produce a energy management platform for small buildings. So that's kind of my connection into this, but actually there's a little bit of a historical story that goes with this. 2 years ago, we started this session on AI, and they had us in kind of one of the normal educational rooms, and it literally was shoulder to shoulder, standing room only in the back. So the next year they put us in a bigger room that sat maybe closer to 150 people, and it was even worse. There was less room and it was shoulder to shoulder. So they put us into this 400 seat room here, and my goal was to fill every seat. And we're pretty close to it. We put a lot of hype out there. We do know that some people haven't found the room, including one of our panelists, by the way, who went to the AHR at Caesar's Palace instead of here, kind of on autopilot. Oh, you're gonna sub in? Oh, okay. You told me you weren't going, sorry.
AI does.
Yeah, this is AI Keith Gipson on the end down here. You know, AI has an imagination. Sometimes it doesn't exactly produce the image that you wanted. So if she doesn't match Keith's picture up here, that's why, you know why. They are with an AI company, so Keith will be here hopefully. We have a fantastic panel. Originally, for those of you who maybe were following this from the beginning, I just want to address this. So passive logic has been part of this panel for the last 2 years. We're supposed to be part of this panel until this week, where they ended up not having a booth and kind of pulling out of the show. There's some, I don't know what the issues are, I won't get into it, but unfortunately they won't be here, long story short. But that's okay, we still have some of the best minds here in AI in our industry with us here today. And if I actually went through and read all of their bios, they're such accomplished individuals, it would take the entire session. So I'm not gonna do that, but I would like each of you to sort of just a quick 30-second introduction, just so everybody knows the angle at which you are coming from, if you would, in your day job. Etrit, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, hi, Etrit, co-founder of a company called KODE Labs. Basically what KODE Labs does is it's a smart building operating system with, it's a really integration data layer with different applications on top that meet buildings where they are at that specific time. So what we've really been able to do is, since 2018, we've been able to solve for the right modules and applications, but then from a vertical perspective, solve for the right outcomes through those same modules and applications. And then I think in this case, with all the data that we're starting to, that we have on the cloud, it's starting to get a little bit more interesting. And also, I think we'll be excited to talk more and more about the whole AI.
So you're coming from the manufacturer side of the world a bit, right? Solution provider.
Yes.
Okay. Going down.
Hi, Brian Turner with OTI. So we're a system integrator. We work with end users and owners, small all the way to large enterprises, to deploy technology. We certainly represent some technologies, but we're also working with technologies that we don't necessarily have direct interface with, and we have to work with their partners to get things deployed. And then we like to stay with those building owners throughout the life cycle of the building, because really managing these complex systems is not something that you can do without being very active and proactive in doing it. So that's what we do.
You're working with some of the biggest names and building
a lot of household names.
I know you can't talk about some of it, but I'm sure if you search somewhere, you probably have heard of them before.
Probably.
Go ahead.
Anno, Scholten. I am with CBRE. If you're not familiar, CBRE is the largest property manager in the world. I'm on the technology side. I do product lead, so I actually lead 3 product initiatives. One we call Smart FM, which is basically how do you take smart building technologies and apply it to facility management systems. Asset management, which is all about how do I know what assets I'm working with. And XRS, which is our extended reality solutions. We apply AI and machine learning to almost all of them, in fact. So that's me.
And just for the record too, Danielle is not a rookie. Danielle was part of our panel last year, so you are a seasoned veteran at this point, so go ahead.
Ironically, I was stepping in for Keith last year because he couldn't even make it to Vegas. So we've had progress that he's here. Well, I don't remember what it was last year, but he couldn't even make it to the city. So I'm Danielle Radin. I am the VP of Global RevOps for Facil.AI. Should I introduce myself or Keith?
Go ahead. Dealer's choice, as they say in Vegas.
My background is actually in psychology and biochemistry, so I bring a lot of science and people to the industry, and really my goal is to understand how technology is involved in our processes, in our way of thinking, in our belief systems, and so at Facil.AI, we have a product that optimizes central chiller plants and a product that optimizes rooftop units. And part of that is AI is quietly working behind the scenes at these companies. So how is that affecting the people that are using it? And that's really a little bit of me.
Yeah, that's good. So we tried to create a panel here that had different points of view or different purposes in their daily work in the industry when it comes to AI. So we'll get a perspective from different things here. So just kind of moving along. That's as much of the vendor pitch as I want to hear today. So this isn't about being a pitch or anything. This is about talking about practical solutions and what's working and scaling and not working and not scaling. We want to focus on outcomes today. Last couple of years we've talked a lot about the pilots and what people are experimenting with and doing. This year I'm really hoping we can move into what's scaling and what's going on out there in adoption in real life. We have no more slides. This is the end of the slide, so you guys don't have to worry about that. If you guys, just a reminder, keep it in language that the common person can understand. I know a lot of you guys are deep into this, so we'll try to do that and focus on real deployments and not theoretical kind of stuff going forward. So I have some questions here that I'm going to start with here right away. So, what I'll do is I'll put these questions out for you guys, and whoever feels strongly, you can start, and then if you want to add in, please do by all means. So let's start with where does AI autonomy stop in buildings today, and where are you personally comfortable letting it start, right? So what is it good for or not good for, maybe? Who wants to take a shot at that?
I'll go. So we, obviously AI is deployed in just about every project we do today, whether it's a retrofit project or a brand new building. And it's really just about where it's deployed. Sometimes it's something as small as a highly contextual LLM. Sometimes it's part of our tooling to allow us to onboard data very, very quickly, get it completely modeled to the asset data, modeled to the building data. So that's how it's being used today, very, very easily. And then I would say once you start getting into the operations, because there's a lot of technology out here and up here that actually deploys AI to actually operate a building, operate a chiller, operate a air handler, operate zones across the entire floor, and make decisions on a continuous basis based on either performance, historical performance, or based on model predictive performance. So there's a lot of different things. And I would say that as an integrator and trying to consult these end users on what to do, we just say, you can let it go pretty far. You just got to be very prescriptive about the guardrails you want it to operate within. Because when you give AI the proper context, AI can do a lot of good things for you. When you don't give it the proper context, then you can end up with Danielle looking like Keith, or the other way around.
Yeah, I'll add to that really quick.
Yeah.
I think just a few things. So from where obviously we're seeing more comfort with AI is at big data level, when you're doing a lot of analytics and portfolio-wide type of, trying to get a better understanding of, hey, what does my portfolio look like? When you get inside the buildings, obviously there's a bunch of different levers you can hit depending on the type of AI that you're using. But the main ones are really HVAC optimization based. AI is not getting into yet at least, or we'll see when, into hard sequence of operations type of, play. The other part where AI stops is really in anything life safety related, because that's still a very big, it's driven on so many layers that I think, we need a different type of, data layer, different type of ontology in buildings for that.
Go ahead, Anto. I'm curious to hear from an owner's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, CBRE, we're obviously heavily focused on maintenance, right? So at the end of the day, our business is people. How do we maintain your buildings? How do we do that efficiently? How do we do that with, subject matter experts? One of our biggest challenges, of course, is our subject matter experts are aging out. How do we get, you folks into the space? It's a big problem for us. The way we kind of break it up at the moment is we see there's a big difference between AI as it relates to metadata, which is what a lot of folks are talking about. Metadata is all about the what is it, where is it, what's it being used for, what work orders are being applied to it. There's a lot of initiatives going on there. We have a lot of programs just dealing with how do we optimize our maintenance, how do we optimize our resources. We pull a lot of data from, obviously, a lot of systems to do that. I think the next area for us is really more in the time series data, right? How did that equipment run over the last year, 2 years? A lot more of the dynamic data, more so than the LLMs, which are applied to just more static meta type data, document data. That's a whole different area, applying machine learning to time series data, but it's kind of the next phase for us.
All right, these questions are all new to me, so catching up fast.
Yeah.
I really like what Brian said about context. AI does really well when we give it context, and really that's the differentiation. AI can look at data, and it can understand data, but it's just numbers. So until you give it a goal and you say, we need this out of that data, that's where AI really shines. And if everybody looks back there at the exit door, how far away are you from the exit door? It's different for everybody. So really what the key takeaway with what is data capable of is to understand where we are as an individual or as a single building owner, as a person, and understand what that final goal is. And that's how you give the AI context. So really, that's where the AI is right now, and that's really where it stops as far as what I'd be comfortable with.
All right. So we heard life safety was a big part of it, and then keeping it in context is important. If I were a building owner and I had limited capital to spend on AI, talk to me a little bit about what are the compelling reasons that I should use my limited budget to prioritize AI use in my buildings and so forth over the next year or two. Wants to take, and by the way, you don't have to all speak.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Etrit, go ahead.
All right, so I think this question is going to be, the answer is going to be a little bit controversial, but I think it's the truth. So I think for
You can work with controversy.
Okay. So just to be clear, most buildings don't have budgets, right? So like most buildings don't have budgets to do the things you want to do. So that's just a reality in life. So if we think that any building has a budget, we're already in the wrong place. The second part is if building owners want to do something with AI, they should not be going to the big four or the typical industrials that have been doing this for 125 years. Not because they don't know it, but because they would have to completely change their business models in 2 days to do the things that they want to do that actually make sense for that building owner. So if you go to them, the biggest problem that you're going to get is you're going to get the same old things that you've always had, but you've just spent a bunch of money and you're stuck in the same place. So that's your first, what we should not be doing. Or the industry should, it needs to be thoughtful of. The second thing of where do you see AI in the next 24 months? I think AI is not going to replace people, right? And then also AI in this whole space personally, I'm not seeing somebody's going to be the furthest along in AI. It's just what you're going to do with AI that's going to be impactful. And then the second part of that, of what you see in AI, is that it's going to change how roles are in buildings and the type of roles that you want in buildings. So if you have a very experienced building engineer or operator or a very experienced energy engineer, they're going to be extremely useful if they learn more how to work with AI, and they can run 30 buildings instead of one. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more in the future. And we think that obviously if you go for a major change, you're going to go for a major economical change, and that's just not going to happen.
So there's people efficiency here to be gained in all this.
Definitely.
Ryan, you and I had an interesting conversation about some of this last night.
Yeah, you might have to remind me about that. But
That's okay. Go ahead.
I
I didn't mean to break your chain of thought.
No, if limited budget is a given, especially for, let's say, 97% of the building class out there. And so for me, it's infrastructure. You can't do anything with AI if you don't actually know what you have and you don't have the data to actually give it to use or the context to give it about your data. So to me, we start with getting your building AI ready, and that means knowing what's in your building, having really good data about all of your assets, right? Everything, especially if let's just focus on mechanical, where it's a big opportunity with a lot of different tools out here. You're going to want to actually understand everything that's there, and so that AI can have context of everything that's there. When it was installed, what model number it is, what its sequence of operations is, what zone it serves, where it's installed, all of those things, right? And then you get the actual data itself and make sure that you have really good data quality and data consistency and reliability. And if you're going to use time series data, make sure that we actually have minutely data or 5-minute data or whatever it needs to be for the type of data source you have. Because once you have all of that and you're ready, then an AI conversation is pretty easy to have. And the budgets required to deploy a lot of AI when you're ready for it are actually pretty low. And a lot of it will pay for itself pretty quickly. But you have to have that infrastructure ready.
All right, go ahead.
In the words of Lee Iacocca, you can lead, follow, or get out of the way. And I really feel like we are at a transition in our culture, in our community, in our industry, that if you are not putting aside a budget for AI, you are going to get steamrolled. And I look at my kids who are all in middle school and high school. They are told to use AI to write their papers. And everyone going forward from here on out will use AI for everything. This is not a potential. This is not an option. This is the future. That would be like saying, in 1990, I don't think I want to use the internet.
I remember when my wife first asked for a cell phone, and I thought, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Why do you need a cell phone? Well, what if there's a problem with the kids at school? They have phones there. We don't need cell phones. Now, I can't hardly go to the bathroom without a cell phone anymore, so. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, just to build on that, our mantra actually at CBRE is that, like you say, AI is not going to replace you. A person using AI is going to replace you, right? That's our mantra, right? If you're not using AI, then who's going to replace. Thanks. But it's through our culture, right? In that everything that we do. So we do it not only for the actual applications in the space itself, but we also do it for the actual development, product development. I actually lead the product development side of the house, and so we use AI for our UX development. We use AI for our product management. We use AI for actual software development. I mean, we are heavily involved. Same message I give to my engineers. If you're not using AI, then the man who's going to use it, or the person who's going to use it, is going to do that. And the asset quality, as we were saying earlier, I mean, from our perspective, CBRE is an asset manager, right, at the end of the day. And honestly, HVAC is just a small part of all the assets that we manage. Everything you see in this building, the carpet, the lights, the floor, the doors, the exit signs, and you just do not believe how bad a quality of data that we have for those assets. It is just horrible. So AI actually helps us significantly in both asset data collection and cleaning it up and normalization of that stuff as well. Just collecting what do you have in your building
I've
surprising.
actually heard stories recently that owners don't even know where some of their buildings are.
We've literally had that. We've literally had clients.
I don't mean to throw CBRE under the bus.
No, it's not us. I mean, it's the
but
clients we
it's
manage.
somebody else, that's right. It's the other guys.
Yeah, we've literally had that. Large folks who do, have tens of thousands of small facilities.
Yeah.
We can give you a list.
Let alone trying to figure out every RTU or chiller or thermostat or sensor, it's a lot. It's a lot. So I want to talk, speaking of, that's a good transition into sort of the practical part of this. You guys have all been implementing AI into buildings, either as users or providers or integrators. Tell me a little bit about what's scaling now. What are the challenges? What's kind of stopping that? Is it, I've heard things like data quality and cybersecurity and integration into existing hardware that was never designed for it. Talk a little bit about what's really working and scaling, and then what is really kind of the number one roadblock going forward.
I'll jump in. Our biggest challenge, probably change management. We operate, some 20, 30,000 folks out there. Change management, how do you actually get the guys and the folks who are actually doing the work to do something different, right? And that's true for any technology change, right? That's not AI specific, that's just any technology change that comes down the pipe. How do you do change management? What does work is showing value propositions really quick, right? That's one of the things that AI does do for us. And the guys are right here. No one has any money. If you ask the client, I have no money. I want to do this, but I have no money. We're in a unique position in that we use the technologies, again, to make us more efficient for our clients, right? So it's really to our own benefit that we use it.
All right.
So I think there's obviously, depending on what the type of implementations, right? So 150 or 100, if you're talking about stores, it's still easy. If you're talking about 150 or 100 Class A assets, or depending on schools or hospitals, there's going to be a level of, obviously, difference there. The other part is what the data and having a lot of data is able to let you do is, kind of find the places that you're going to get stuck at before you get stuck there. So very clearly that if you're in a specific region, in that region, depending on the scope that you're talking about, right? So if you're talking about a smart building scope, you're going to have a pretty good idea who represents who. So who's servicing what, and then obviously like the type of sensors and the type of even at times softwares or solutions that typically are being sold most, because you got that data now, like we have that. And then the thing that AI is allowing us to do is take that profile, visualize it, but in a way where now you can see what is going to be successful from the outcomes because at times they may own that building, lease that building, or they may be partly in that building, right? So then there's different challenges based off of that. And then the other parts where we very clearly see, as we're working with and we have some partners here that are in the room, as we're working with them, is you're going to get stuck in a few different places. You're going to get stuck if you are trying to customize one building right then and there, and that could take you 8 months, not because you don't know how to customize it, it's because depending on who is in that building and what their outcomes are for that building. So you got the service contractors, and then you got obviously all the others, and how do you get them to buy along? So I think there's paths and ways to do that so you don't get stuck. And also with AI now, that kind of data, keep feeding it, and it tells you, so that way, so then these buildings don't need as much money to at least do the type of use cases that they can do, to then go out and meet the rest of the use cases and get the budgets and everything that they need, because I think that's just what we see.
So it sounds like you're saying it scales nicely with data in that side of it, but it sounds a little like what Anno was saying, change management is a challenge.
Change management is a challenge at the end user level, and why it's a challenge at the end user level is that when you're doing 100 type of buildings, right, that you don't have that many profiles in the other side that are responsible to actually run or optimize 100 buildings. They're just responsible for a bunch of people that actually run the buildings and inside the building. So there's a lot of changes that need to continue to keep coming, but I think it's heading in a really good direction.
And Danielle, it looked like you wanted to say something.
I think one of the things that is challenging but also easy, I'll explain that, is expectations. We as facility managers, PMs, plant managers, whatever we are in that role, have an expectation of what AI is going to do and what data it needs. And so communicating realistic results has been difficult from a vendor's perspective. We have data, as in Keith's words, because I'm Keith. We can pull the data from the Commodore 64 on the wall that's running your business right now, and it does good enough, right? So we've got data that we can pull in, and the AI can use it and it can optimize it. But what we're expecting, because we see it with Google and we see it with Tesla, we want a solution that's going to solve everything. So we want the data from the Commodore 64, but we want it to make our building perfect. And so really meeting us where we are and renegotiating expectations has been a limiter for scalability, I would say.
I think it's pretty safe to say that I don't want a Commodore 64 driving my Tesla, right?
Good.
Yeah. All right. If, there's been a lot of activity, a number of you are involved with this in the industry to standardize more, to get access to data better, more contextualized with semantics and so forth. But if you could standardize one thing here going forward, what is the thing that we need to focus on as an industry to standardize in the very near future?
So there was a really good LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago that was about, this term AI. And I think what we need to start doing is acknowledging that we're using AI and will continue to grow our use of AI and stop selling AI. We don't sell mobile phones anymore. We don't sell the internet anymore. We don't go in and say, hey, you're going to be able to access with a browser. That's not how we lead. We need to standardize on focusing on the outcomes. Danielle said it. Anno said it. The last time I went into one of my clients and said, hey, you want to buy this really new AI product? It's really cool. Is never. Because that doesn't work. I need to understand what the owners do, and if we standardize on understanding what the outcomes are most important to them, it could be people comfort, it could be energy efficiency, it could be predictive maintenance, it could be lots of different things. And as providers, service providers, or technology providers, if we don't have the right solutions for their outcomes, it doesn't matter anyway. And AI is just part of our journey, and if we acknowledge it as part of our journey, then we can stop letting that lead our conversation, and it can just be part of the conversation.
Well said.
Yeah, and just to echo that again, I mean, it's our biggest challenge on standardizing anything is probably the assets again. But again, AI is making a huge difference to us in doing that, right? I mean, it used to be a very heavy people process. And what we're doing today with AI and machine learning on how we collect our assets and asset data is actually making that a lot faster, easier, which then just echoes Brian's point. It's not about the tech and it's not about AI per se, but what does that mean, right? What does standardizing those asset data mean to my client? What do we get him as a result of that? And we're heavily focused again on preventative maintenance, reactive maintenance. How do I make sure that I'm sending the right guy to do the right thing at the right time with the right information? I mean, that's the outcome. It's outcomes focused. These are just tools, right? Great tools, don't get me wrong. Awesome tools, but they're just tools.
Standardizing around asset information and context. Not you're not talking about the data per se. It's
not about the data per se, but what am I dealing with?
Yeah,
the metadata.
Yep. Anyone else? Yep.
So I think from a business aspect, from our perspective, what we want to continue to keep doing, especially with AI, right, is understanding the whys of our partners, and because we're seeing so much more now. So like we see how they look at a specific device, and also how they look at a floor in a building, and then like Anno said, you have many other things that go there. So like depending on the type of client that they have, so we're like right off the bat having a database for them so we can understand the whys better, because then 24 months from now, having the right specifications that are not the specifications of today, that also make it easier for these guys, end users and everybody else, to have more logical, easier, better programming, and a better way to understand when something is customized and the why behind it. And then also, when you go to price it, you're not pricing 8 things in one, but you're pricing basically, depending on the type of specification that you're working on, you have a really good definition. So that way, everybody in the industry starts to understand it.
So you're saying how we go to market with this stuff is maybe something that needs to...
I'm saying still, like right now, really the thing that you really want to standardize more and more is there's just a lot of different ways that people do things. Regardless if you're doing it on Haystack, Brick, or wherever else, we still see that not everybody follows that kind of method, and it's all over the place. So understanding those whys and going deeper there, so that 24 months from now, you actually have different specifications for Div 23, 25, and all over.
What's interesting, I didn't hear any of you say anything about there is a new standard that we need in data to make all of this happen. And Brian, to remind you of the conversation I was referring to, you talked about AI development and evolution is moving faster than the speed of building in business in particular. And standards are from academia, we were talking about, and that's just not going to keep up with what's going on. I mean, literally, if we compared to the discussions that we had 2 years ago in the session to now and what has happened and what's available, it's completely different at this point. Yeah. Right, so standards is more of a mindset almost than a standard. I think
standards is a given, though. You know, I think that's something that if you're talking about AI, standards should, I think that shouldn't even be a conversation as much anymore, because you better have some standard there. And if you don't have that, yes, we can do some cute AI, but you're not going to do that.
I would argue that, having said what I just said, at the same time, the use of standards is still really important in making data available and so forth going forward. Yeah, right?
And I think the comment was building on what you guys were talking about last night. What you were talking about, it's going to be available in 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is down the road. But there's also a tremendous amount of standards already out there from IT, cybersecurity, and I think that part of our responsibility here is not to have an ASHRAE standard, a BACnet standard, a new thing that's going to happen in 2030, but instead to really encourage BACnet, ASHRAE to work with other industries who have already solved some of these problems and actually incorporate that in. So we're not building another thing. We're actually showing how all of these standards across industries come together to make the ultimate defining standard. And then that's something AI can use right now, because I don't believe we need new standards. We don't need new ontologies. We don't need any of that stuff. What we need is to bring it all together. Instead of having all these silos, just break down the silos. If there's anything that's going to help us break down the silos, it's AI. AI doesn't care about borders, doesn't care about dirt, doesn't care about countries. It's there. If the data is there, the access is there, the standards are there, it's going to use them. And you can tell it how to use them.
Danielle?
I think there is one standard we need. We need to standardize that everyone needs to have a data governance. They need to have some sort of AI governance because it is moving so fast. The industry is not moving as fast as AI is going to change it. And we need to be a little bit proactive in thinking about, how is this going to be used in my building? What am I doing to make sure that the AI is working for me and not against me? How am I incorporating all of my teams to work together? Because that's another benefit of AI, is all of a sudden everybody can access anything they want in their own language or their own technical language. So really having that standard of governance is what I would say that is a standard I would.
I need to also say that there's a very dedicated, smart group of individuals who are working with ASHRAE and NIST on 223P, and that's in knowledge graphs and moving that forward. That needs to happen faster. We can't, last night, anyone that was at the BACnet Cloud Connective, Jim did a nice history of BACnet, and it was literally sometimes a decade between start and adoption and release. And I don't think any one of you could say, here's what AI in our industry is going to look like 10 years from now at this point, right? So it needs to go fast. Let me change direction here just a little bit. I want to talk about edge versus cloud. Where should AI live and why?
Yes, in the edge and the cloud.
So maybe give an example of a control loop that should stay at the edge versus be in the cloud.
I think
with some
life safety needs to be local. You need to keep that in the edge because it needs to be fast. You can't have the dependency on an internet connection. Anything life safety needs to be at the edge. Optimization, it's okay. You can save energy. You can maybe be a little bit less efficient. That's okay to be up in the cloud. It's not something you need to check on a daily basis. If you are not checking on your PID loop every day, probably you can put it up in the cloud. So those are some brief examples.
Go a slightly different way. I think you can do AI at the edge these days, right? GPU capability exists at the edge. There's the cost of the GPU technology is coming down. For those of you who do any of the hobbyist technologies, you all know that most of the new devices have all got ML capability built right into the edge. Very, very specific use case. It's not generic, AI. It's not generic machine learning. It's a very specific, what they call small model type edge solutions. NVIDIA has released a GPU in $200 edge device, right? Complete GPU capability with machine learning built right in, so you can do it at the edge. There's no reason why you can't. The technology hasn't really stopped us anymore. So from our perspective, from a CBRE perspective, it's a bit of a doesn't matter. I think there are still, to Daniel's point, a few of the other security, what you're doing with physical entrance camera. But even though they have cameras these days, they have built-in AI technology built right into the camera as well, right? So it's what you do with it after that is really the...
It sounds more of a business decision than 100%. A technical decision.
It's, to Daniel's point, it's moving so fast in that, you can do small language models directly right down in tiny edge devices just fine. It'll do it fine.
Either of you have a strong opinion one way or another, something to add?
No, I pretty much echo what those guys have said. That there are going to be use cases where you just adding AI and the ability to do that stuff at the very, very edge, at the sensor level, at a small PTAC unit or something is not going to give you any additional benefit or value. So why pay $100 if I can pay $30? But you definitely have larger edge devices that absolutely benefit from it, especially if they get sensor data from all the stuff that's related to it. So I think there's huge value in having edge, but I also think the amount of data that you can process in cloud to inform those edge devices how they should act, similar to what the electric car companies are doing with auto driving, I think that's a big value. So I have to say it's going to be.
So I didn't really intend for this to be a yes or no question, but it really is yes, right? And to somebody's point here, you can't buy devices anymore hardly that don't have some element of AI embedded. I was looking for a remote wireless microphone to use in recording, and every microphone, $30 microphone, by the way, I was looking at had AI in it. So they claim. So, Etrit, did you have anything you needed to add? Okay. Talk a little bit about a recent business case that actually has gotten approved and moved forward. I know you can't name names and customers and so forth, but where are the practical applications going? What's getting approved? What's the strongest value outcomes that you guys are seeing out there?
I've got a really cool one, very interesting one, and it's going to go against what Anno said, that AI won't replace people. But as we have an aging, retiring workforce out there that have been chief engineers and facility managers, and they've got just a ton of data about their facility. A lot of these guys and ladies have lived in that building or in a few buildings for 30 years. And the amount of knowledge they have about those buildings is insane. and there's a big fear of losing it. So what I'm seeing some companies do is actually, just like you're doing, using AI to help you model assets and find all the assets, they're actually recording everything these people know. They're interviewing them, and they're getting all of that context built into the model so that future generations can ask questions about what used to be here. How did this used to work? Why is this thing over here now? And having, whether you want to call it Fred or Lucy or whatever you want to call it, you can call it something and ask, hey, Fred, why is this thing like this? And you're going to get that historical information. So I've seen that's already being started on small pilots, but I do see that's one area that I think could scale pretty fast.
The aging workforce. By the way, if you don't believe the workforce in our industry is aging out, look at my picture up there. Yeah, we are aging out. You look completely different. So yeah, that is a major issue. That knowledge can just walk out the door with a retirement package, right? And it's a problem. So Etrit.
Yeah, I think that's a great one from Brian. There's a good amount, but I think really at the core, when you're talking about even at the government level and a bunch of other places, what they're really trying to get to start is a ontology and a data set that goes as far as Anno was talking about, and then as high level as obviously some different industries that that like as far as they've gone. So really, it's getting this layer in place. That's a complete data layer where they know which buildings have customizations, which buildings don't actually, which buildings, how many customizations which buildings have, what do they have in those buildings, and then what kind of use cases can they enable themselves, because a lot of these guys are building their own stuff too, and then what kind of use cases can be delivered by the platform itself, right? What we're seeing now more and more is tying, obviously going deeper into utilities, and then tying it with actual operations day to day, but in a little bit of a different way. And then also making all these things that used to be automated, really thinking of them like which use cases are more easier to be actually intelligent, right? So like from when you look at the whole building cycle and how the buildings operate, it just depends on how it's actually set up, who's doing it, and then also from there, understanding what you can do with that. I think that's the biggest core that is getting approved now all the time, every single time, because the people that own these buildings are usually institutionals, right? And then the institutionals need to be a little bit safe with their money. They can't just go throwing money around. So you got to be able to give them enough so that way they can say, I met this. This is really good. It's actually going to make me more efficient. And then also for the corporations, they can't go crazy trying to do AI in their buildings because they're AI companies. They're making chips. They're doing all these other things. So they get a little bit, there you have to follow through from passing, first of all, just being able to pass their cybersecurity and IT requirements, which I think are different now, than going into the type of use cases that they need. Their use cases are not, I want to optimize my BMS that's sitting in the basement and the password is literally right there. Their use cases are more like division, team, and floor type of optimizations all the way up to the portfolio.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm dying to hear from you. What is CBRE approving in its customers? What are they approving?
Yeah, the big one that we did release end of last year that's going into all the clients this year is something we call a maintenance optimization engine. As you can imagine, we have access to the largest set of maintenance records that we've done around the world, and we can mine all that data. We've mined all the data that goes with the systems that are in those buildings. And of course, one of the things that you find is preventative maintenance is heavily over-maintained, right? The schedules aren't what they're supposed to be. They date back to many, many generations of folks who, this is how we did it because that's how you do it. And so we applied a lot of machine learning and AI to that. We rolled that out as an engine that was rolled into a thing called maintenance optimization program, making a material impact on our maintenance programs, preventative maintenance programs, while still keeping an eye on the asset health, which ties back into our asset health analysis and our reactive maintenance programs, making a huge difference on just the cost of what we do to maintain buildings.
All right. Did you get something, Daniel?
Yeah, I would say specific use cases is using AI to learn at a much more granular level than we could. We can do pre-cooling. And we can get pretty close to, all right, we want to have the temperature at this time. It gets pretty good. But what if you could do pre-cooling that readjusts itself every 5 minutes and takes into account Mercury retrograde and what Tracy had for breakfast, and it knows exactly what temperature it wants to have. So it's that really granular learning on a time schedule with real-time feedback from a sensor.
Ability to collate disparate kinds of
exactly
data.
Right. Yeah. Data that we maybe never even considered. We've got outdoor air temperature, we've got indoor air temperature, we've got humidity and pressure. But what about the cold front that's coming in? If we can tie into the weather stations and we can predict a little bit of that, how do we involve that? So really being able to tie in data that isn't directly from our building, but the AI, what's another number to just add into your calculation? So really being able to learn at a granular level is a specific use case.
All right. I'm watching our time, and I'm going to give you guys a 3-minute warning here. I want to open this up to some audience questions, so you have about 3 to 5 minutes. Oh, the real Keith is here.
I don't know. Do we want to change?
Yeah, I think we're doing okay. You can say hi and introduce yourself. But 5 minutes, I want to open it up to audience questions here. I have one more that I want to kind of give to the panel here, and that is the big one that a lot of people were very worried about a little while ago, but maybe not so much, and we've touched on it a bit here today, but how does AI change the way buildings are staffed and operated over the next 3 to 5 years, let's say? So.
Yeah, Keith Gipson, CEO and late founder of the Facil.Ai. I'm glad to be here. One point I wanted to make in this conference, a lot of times the thing that comes up is resiliency of AI as a compared to the BAS, and I want to just briefly talk about that. So people always say, what happens if one of the sensors goes bad or goes out of calibration? So let's contrast and compare that very quickly with a traditional building automation system. Our AI platform takes in about 6 to 7 data points every 5 minutes: outside air wet bulb temperature, time of day, schedule, load, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say the outside air wet bulb temperature goes out. Okay, fine. A traditional BAS, that would be the end of it. It would shut down, it wouldn't control anymore. But one thing that AI is capable of doing is it has 5 to 10 other variables. So it doesn't necessarily need the outside air wet bulb temperature because it can switch back to the time of day. So if it's 11 o'clock today, it can look back and say, what did I do at 11 a.m. yesterday? Might not be precise, but at least it's a backup strategy. In fact, it could lose all of its sensors. Let's say it had 100 sensors and it lost all of them. What does it have? What one piece of information does it have? What I did 5 minutes ago. So how about we just stay at the same set point and wait for all the sensors to come back? It's no worse than the building automation system that's had the same static set point for 10 years. That's the point I want to make.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you guys want to add something to how it's going to change and how are buildings staffed and so forth?
I think obviously like the automotive, being from Detroit, obviously you always look at the automotive space and how the automotive space has what's been happening there, right? And I think I don't want to make this analogy because you guys know it really well, right? But you think about Tesla, but then you add the insurances of the automotives. So like you add Lemonade, for example, right? So look it up, and you add some of the others. So like with that kind of data and the way that Tesla is going from all the way to how they're building the cars, to the data that they're pulling from the cars and the kind of outcomes that they're doing now, which are way more than just cars, right? And then Lemonade, the type of data that they have and how they're using AI to actually price and to change pricing and to really be more real time is very interesting compared to, some of the others that obviously are still trying to figure out how to get this tiered system going, right? So like the reason why I'm saying this is I think our industry is it's going to take some time to change, because government's not just going to let our industry just completely change altogether, because a lot of people would have no jobs, which is one thing, and obviously we're not ready for that yet. But the biggest thing is the system integrators, the service contractors, and the ones that are now going further and further. I would say that they have a huge opportunity here to understand how to use AI, where then the roles that continue to change at CBRE, at a bunch of other places, I think these guys have a ton of opportunity to learn this more, to try to be a little bit more ahead of the game, because it took us a while to just understand SaaS. Imagine understanding how to price AI. Like, that's
can I interject real quick? Let's nail it. Lemonade just partnered with Tesla, and they're offering half price insurance because it's twice as safe. That's the top line message. Half.
So I want to bring it back to staffing in buildings. Brian, I know you're in there all the time. What do you see changing in facility staffs?
A very quick answer to this. I think the staffing inside of buildings will be empowered. They won't have the question, I don't know how, I don't know why, and I don't know who. So they'll know why it's happening, they'll know what's happening, they'll know who to contact to get it repaired. A lot of times those questions are very difficult to find, and they're going to know that in an instant. So they're going to be empowered. And just about everything they do across systems they may not even directly personally understand. They're going to have so much context, so much information, they'll be able to make decisions quicker. And I think decisions that right now have to get 1, 2, 3 layers of approval will now be able to be made at the edge, right? At that person that's dealing with it. They won't have to say, okay, I got 3 bids and now this and this and this. No, we'll already know what this job is worth. You know, we see what Uber does and what they did to change the whole industry around ride sharing. And that's going to happen again, I think, with service contracting. Like, I know what this problem should cost us. I know there's 7 vendors that can do this right now for me. I'm going to put it out there and see who's going to show up. It's going to change dramatically. And
Uber for service contractors.
100%.
A quick one. So the guy that you described earlier, we call him the building whisperer, right? He's the guy who knows where the 2 wires are with the electrical tape that you don't touch, because the whole building will go down if you do. And that's the challenge, right? And so you're probably not surprised how much mundane work and diagnostics that one guy has to do all day long in the building, right? Because we just can't get him the information, we can't get him the data. And like we said earlier, he doesn't want to be there anymore. You know, like me, he's like, time to go. So we see a big change to that. And you know, as Brian was saying, how do we get data to that younger generation faster, better, quicker, get the right answers, get the right details, get the right information so he could do that. And to your point about the Tesla examples, my classic was the one time I brought my Tesla in for a service, which turned out to be my fault, but anyway. You know, and the kid comes out with the laptop. I go, "Are you my mechanic?" And he goes, "Well, technician, but sure," you know. And by the way, I've got all your data on my laptop as I walk out the door. And you know, if you want to see a model, that's what it is, right? How do we get that to the kid so he can do the diagnostics and resolve the issue? I'm not relying on my building whisperer anymore.
We've been worried about the old generation leaving and no one new coming in, but this is, I think, how new younger individuals are coming into the industry, right? This is becoming a much more high tech. So I'm watching time here. We're down to 4 minutes, but I want to open it up. Who has a burning question? First hand up right here.
Yeah, I have a question when it comes to, for instance, optimizing sequence of operation. Do facilities managers insist always to have a human element in the decision, or are they getting ready to basically say, I hand it over to the AI, the small decisions within guardrails?
This is a good one. This is a little similar to what we said earlier, but how far do we let it go?
All the way. We don't even put guardrails on our stuff anymore. We're a trusted source of information. The AI has proven itself to be safe and reliable. That's our message. It's time to take the safety driver out of the full self-driving vehicle. Building. We don't even put them
Full
on
self-drive, no passenger. I live right
Autonomous.
near Waymo's headquarters, and I see these driverless cars going around all the time. It still makes me nervous.
Yeah, we have the Waymo data center, as a matter of fact. So, yep, we're
Anyone else?
controlling that.
Brian, you see that happening, integration, from an
I think-
integration standpoint?
Yeah, I think there's some technologies out there that you could do that. I still like to give context. I don't want to call them training wheels because they're not training wheels. You let it do a lot, but I want to make sure that, for example, we want to do a human comfort thing, and I want to break this area up into 10 zones and allow humans in all of these areas to contribute to the comfort that they're experiencing. Well, I want to make sure that, hey, I don't want to allow it to get too far out of whack. I don't want that back corner to go to 78 degrees while front corner is at 68 because the people in those different areas wanted that stuff. So I might give it guardrails and say, let's go 74 to 70 or 68 to 73. And it's those kinds of things, but I don't give it guardrails to a lot of what Keith is saying about how much it can change at any given time, how much data it wants to look at. It's like, here's your bounds, now go. And I think we're there now with so many products. It's kind of amazing how fast it's gone from when we sat here last year to where we were maybe starting to pilot one or two of those types of things to now we, as integrators, when an end user asks us, is there stuff out there? It's like, yeah, and it's not just one thing. There's like 6 or 7 products that do it, and they have some nuance about how they're different, but largely they're all using some level of AI, machine learning, predictive control, something.
Respectfully, that's not a guardrail. That's a human preference. That's like calling the setting that you put your cruise control on a tachometer where you're going to put a high rev limit. Okay, our AI honors all of the humans' requests. We have 1,900 stores, and one of our clients, 6,000 zones. It defers to each and every single store manager. So whatever range, the AI has no stake in that. So that's a human preference. That's not a guardrail. That's a setting. It's a range.
Etrit, did you?
No, just real quick. It just depends on obviously where you're enabling it. Cities like New York have some different rules about how far you can go with sequence of operations without somebody being there. And as far as like how much you can do and how far you can go, if you have agents that are working in the background, the things that let you go a little bit further is if your developers are adding more and more of the semantic code that actually goes deeper and deeper and deeper and makes you understand. But like the use cases for sequence of operations, I still like I'm with Brian on that one. The operators still don't know obviously how to use analytics sometimes because they're somewhere else, let alone adding AI. And then also the AI needs a lot more learning in buildings because there's nowhere that the AI can pick up an ontology layer or something where like it knows how something is supposed to work when it shows on and off in the same exact chiller, for example.
Except our customers.
Good. Let's squeeze one more in.
Are you guys using any agentic AI integration with EMS or PI systems so that you can interact with it by asking questions?
Yes.
Building okay?
Yes.
What are you looking at instead of having to peel through layers of information?
Yes.
Probably the most common use today is that.
Yeah. The agentic AI is obviously becoming more and more popular. What it doesn't do yet, unless you can actually start to go further with it and feed it the right data and see, so you can keep teaching like how that building is because of how the customizations in that buildings are. So like, again, I would say some semantic code is a big part of that, but a lot of people can show you an agentic AI, but it may just only show you what it's saying in that dashboard or like the type of users that it has or some of the other things. Where it starts to become more powerful is when it learns that building more and more, and then the operator knows how to use it too.
Where are you guys at in that spectrum? Or where's the industry in that spectrum?
I think it's more and more common, right? And it's
Very general.
part of the industry that's still evolving. I think it's safe to say. And
Yes, we do right now. It's working. It's been working for years. Yes. This is a full self-driving corner over here, but yes.
interesting. We're a little past our time here, so I do want to we could go on for another hour in my opinion. But I want to say thank you to the panel, first of all. Very good. It's interesting how all of this has evolved. Thank you again to everyone that took your time out of your day, and stay tuned. Next year, we'll bring it all back and do it again. So thanks, and on behalf of automatedbuildings.com, thank you guys.